this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Bit of kitchen time. It's a rare event nowadays because there's just not much going on, and you know, in the repotting or mounting. A lot of that's because I'm not getting new orchids in. But this giant Sharry baby goes back to a trip to Burnham's where you've got to come out with something in a carrier bag. It's traditional. Now the spike on this has been dropping flipping blooms in pots and blooms all over the place. It's good to have had so many, but it's had its day now, so it's coming off. It is time anyway. And then that can go into pieces in there and go out with whatever's in the pot, the media. So that's that. Now this is a giant of a plant. I suspect it's going to be more than one. How many? We won't know till we get it out of the pot. But what we do have is plenty of this going on. Yeah, we've got two new growths there next to each other. There's a great big new growth here. So there's at least three good strong new growths on here, but they could be on different plants. So let's get a stick out and get that out of the way. And go in the cupboard for Ron. That's later on. Keep the tag since it's one of mine. Now this should be dry, or dry-ish. Now we do have a problem here, because if you look at those roots, they've been chopped off. Yeah? So somebody's taken that out of a larger pot, possibly, and trimmed the roots off. Look, that's been hacked. Just absolutely hacked off. Every root severed. So the growing tips of those roots are gone, if they were there, and we have quite a compressed mass of roots. This is not going to be easy. But it's in bark. So now I've got a horrible feeling this has been potted on. But all I need to know is there a mass of moss in the middle? Because if there isn't, then it's not quite so important to get all the old media out. Right, so we do have some of the cocoa peat, which does smell of mushrooms, but it's got bark in with it. It is bark, it's hard bark as well, so although this smells a bit Fausty, I don't think it's gone off, if you know what I mean. So although it's probably a bit old, it's probably not gone sour and acidic. But yeah, it'll be a right pain trying to sort these roots out. I'm trying to work in the middle here, because 9 times out of 10, if there's new roots, they go down the edge of the pot, and you end up with the dead ones in the middle normally. So you can root about in the middle of a plant, not damaging much. So you can get a lot, and that's where most of the old media would be, obviously. So you can do a pretty good clear out just by working with that. And then effectively in places you just have to dig your way through and break the outer ring so that you can get at stuff. Now it's a branching root system, so the fact that all these roots have been hacked off isn't the end of the world. Far from it. I just don't think it was done that long ago, so I don't think these roots have had a big chance to sort of branch out. So, you know, this is the oldest part of the plant here, with the leafless smaller bulbs, and underneath there is a wodge of dead roots basically, and we have them off straight away. It's just a massive amount of dead roots in that one place. And as I said, that's the oldest part of the plant, and there is a little bit of moss in there, so there was a plug. So this may well have been potted on with a moss plug into something else, and then possibly done again. So it's done some travels. I don't think I'm going to get, there isn't much more media left, it's just roots. There's not much media left in there at all. See if we can break through this bit, because this is still a solid mass here. Now, the bulb I've just picked up is a separate plant, I'm sure it is. I can feel it wobbling. So let's do that. Yes, it is. Right, so just held together by tangled roots. So there's one plant, and that's got a strong new growth on it. Yeah. So that's quite a nice piece. New growth is pushing on strong. I don't see a mass of new roots coming out from the base of it, so they are probably still to come, which is excellent because it means this should pick up reasonably quick. Just clear the sheaths out the way, then if new roots do start, that's coming off anyway. I was just going to say that can come off, but it was off anyway. And there we go, that root leaf is not serving any purpose. So that's quite a nice plant actually. It's got two very plump bulbs, large bulbs for Sharry Baby as well, and a new growth that's pushing on strong. So that's a good piece. That is a single plant. Now unfortunately this isn't a large root system, but it should be generating a new one very, very soon. So we'll just give that a quick rinse. That doesn't need any more work. There's no roots to cut off because these roots are viable, apart from the ones that have been snipped. So that's a good piece. That's a nice looking plant. Now what have we got left? We've got any more bits that are going to fall off? Yeah, I do believe we have. This bulb here is separate. Now you can see why it's such a large plant. You know, it's actually a group of plants squashed in together and sold as one. Now this piece that's coming off here is just effectively a single bulb and a new growth. And the new growth's coming out inside that leaf, so the first thing that's got to happen is that leaf has to come off. That will allow the roots to come out from the new growth. That leaf can stay. And this also has some roots, some viable roots. The only thing I do want to do is take that. That will remove a few roots, but I don't like having a stump, a woody stump, on the base of a plant. I'll just take that bit off. And it still leaves us some roots and the ability to push new roots out quite soon with that new growth. So that's another piece. These may well go in one pot, and what we've got left now is I think this is two as well. Yeah, they're just joined by tangled roots. The rhizome is not joined, so it's just a matter of separating the roots really. I think I might actually help them this time. Rather than tear at them, we'll give them a start. Right, what have we got here? Some dead sheaths. We've got any dead leaf. No new growth on this piece, just two huge massive bulbs. New growth should come from inside here in the not too distant future. But this, see now when you get a situation like this where there isn't a new growth but you've got two really plump bulbs, you could actually cut all of that root system off and pop this up in some moss or something to try and generate some new roots, but more importantly get a new growth going which will produce new roots. And this plant would last a very long time on the reserves in those two bulbs. They would eventually start to desiccate, but with no roots at all, that would survive some time. It can feed itself from its leaves, yeah? Obviously it's better with some roots. But this piece has no new growth, so this one will take a bit longer to sort of get going again. But with two bulbs that size, both leaved, whatever new growth is produced on this should bloom. As opposed to this one, which is a single bulb and a new growth. If that new growth tried to bloom, I'd stop it and wait for the next one to make sure it's got some backup. And then what does that leave us with then? That leaves us with a piece that's not connected. Now that's a single old bulb. Now although that would eventually produce a new growth, I don't need that many Sharry babies. And bearing in mind my situation of moving house soon, and not necessarily knowing where I'm going to go, I've already got too many Sharry babies because I had one, now I've got at least 3. But what we've got here is now yet again a single bulb and a nice strong new growth that has yet to start its new roots. So obviously on this clone of Sharry baby, because don't forget they can be different, the new roots come late. So the new roots are going to follow on, probably as the bulbs start to get to maturity. Wodge of roots from the other bit there. This wodge of roots are actually attached. There's a few loose ones there that have been snipped. Just gently tug those, and that will leave what's left. Yeah, again, not a bad little root system. Again, this can survive on that bulb for some time along with the leaves, and the new growth has progressed plenty far enough to be feeding itself, so that it won't use any resources growing this on and should produce yet a good root system. Now all we've got to do is decide what on earth we're going to do with them all, with all these pieces. So what's happened is some of the leaves have been split in two where the new growth has pushed up and gone through a leaf. There's a huge lump there. Ah, it's just a folded leaf. I thought perhaps there might have been a growth in there, but there isn't. So I'm going to take that piece off. It's only going to waggle around. Right, so we've got some leaves. Slightly distorted bulb here. Yeah, not quite. It's got like a lump running through it. But nonetheless, okay, with a good strong new growth. So we will get rid of the rubbish, and then I shall decide what these are going to go in, whether we're going to have one large pot full, or whether we're going to have 2 potfuls, or how many plants have we got here? 4. We don't really want 4 pots, so we may end up with 2 lots of 2. But what I would want is to end up with at least 1 pot that's going to bloom soon. In other words, it's got the largest new growth on. So, you know, and maybe it can have another one in with it that will follow on. And maybe the 2 smaller pieces in a separate pot to bring on behind, yeah, to bloom at a later time. And then we've got to decide what size pot and what media we're going to use. We will be using a new media, so I'll be back. What a mess. Yeah. It's trying to get everything that I need here so that you can see it all, and get the camera far enough away that it's all in. So anyway, I think I know what I'm doing. This coffee will help. Right, now we're having 2 and 2, yeah, and 1 pot will be the larger of the plants with 1 new growth that is maturing or heading towards maturity, which will be the next thing to bloom, and it's got 2 backup bulbs so it can be allowed to bloom. And then the other partner in crime will be these 2 huge bulbs with no new growth, but the next new growth that comes on here can bloom. So those will be the 2 that are going in the bigger pot, and that will be like my blooming size plants, 2, because there's 2 in there, with the next bloom spike on that latest growth, no doubt, providing it doesn't get set back too much by this process, which it shouldn't do. And then the other 2, we've got 2 plants here, both with new growths, but both with only 1 backup bulb, which may or may not be allowed to bloom, probably not. We just grow them on and get 2 good strong plants with 2 good strong bulbs, and then the next new growth will be the bloomer And that can go in a smaller pot. And it can go out the way for now as well. Running out of space here. So you can go up there. Right, that's that done. Now as far as media is concerned, you can do this straight away. You have some chunky bark in the bottom, just for drainage and so the holes don't get bunged up. There's still an airflow there. So that's one. And then you can take some for the other one. And now that can go out of the way because we don't need that anymore. Getting there. Right, and then we've got, what you call it? Burnham's large bark, which I call medium, which will be the basis of the mix. And it has smaller pieces in with it. It has pieces of rubbish in with it. It's even got some cocoa husk in with it, where last time I did some potting and I didn't finish the media up, I just put it back in this bag. So this bag often has little bits of other stuff mixed in with it, where it was mixed up for something else a while back. But I usually just have a sort through, you know, bits of grass, bits of timber that's not actually bark. Well, that's not that important really. It's just something I feel I ought to do. So that's that. And then we will have some charcoal, just because it's there. Why not? Other people do. So we put some of that in, which means I've now got grubby mitts. Dirty. That's that. Then we've got the cocoa husk. Now I'm getting, the bag of cocoa husk that I'm currently using is getting low. So in the not too distant future, I do have another unopened bag from the supplier, as opposed to my bag that I keep it in, that hasn't been prepared yet. So that's got to have all the soaking done and everything. But obviously what I don't want to do is get caught out and actually need to pot something using the cocoa husk, and I haven't prepared it. So I need to get on and do that. So we will have a good portion of cocoa husk in there, hold some moisture, but still allow some airflow. That's its purpose with these type of orchids. That they're not fine roots. It's not a fine rooted plant, but it's also not a thick fleshy rooted plant. It's that in between stage where you need the media reasonably tight so that the roots touch, but you've still got to have some air in there. It's got to have that air to be able to pass through, and because you've got room for air, when you pour your water in, it goes through and out the bottom. It doesn't hang around, because that is the way a lot of root systems are lost, is where they you pour in a litre of water and only half a litre comes out, whereas most of that litre should come out of the bottom. And a way of, if you can keep your eye on your individual plants, the way to tell is, first of all, you've got a date in your notes to say when you last repotted it. And when it looks as though it's been in there a while, you know your own media, you know, whether it's quality bark or cheaper stuff that goes off a bit quicker, whatever you use. If your bark starts, or your media starts to go off around the 18-month period, then as you're approaching that 18 months, watch the water. Because if you pour that litre through and only half a litre comes out, it's time to repot. unless it's a moss type media and you want that water to stay in there. But I don't. I like my water to go through and come out the bottom. And as it does that, you flood the pot, you wash out old stuff, stale air, and suck in new air to take its place. So you replace the air in the pot. It's not just the watering thing you're doing. You're getting a fresh air flow through the pot, and that brings in new oxygen for the roots and stuff like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some of our Welsh moss. Great boil. Now this hasn't been cleaned or anything, it's got bits of grass in. And I'm not particularly worried, because if the grass starts to grow it can just be pulled out of the pot later, can't it? But I want some Welsh moss in here broken up. So I'm just going to break it into not tiny little pieces, because according to Marius, providing there's enough of a piece there, it will start to grow in the pot. So you've then got live moss not sitting on top of the pot, but throughout the pot. And apparently the roots absolutely thrive on it. Marius got his a while back, and he's had stuff potted in it and mounted in it for some time, and he has noticed substantial root growth. So that's what we're replicating. This bag is basically what's left over. I've got 4 trays of the flipping stuff in my grow room, and this is what's left. And I've got nowhere to put it. I've got no more trays. And do you know what I was thinking of doing? It's a bit naughty, but this came from a private estate. So it has been collected from the wild, but not real wild, if you know what I mean. So it's been legally collected from a private estate. So it is capable of growing in the wild in the UK climate. So how about taking this and trying to get a couple of colonies going near where I live? And then I thought, well, that's a bit daft, because you're not going to be living there much longer, are you? So why not wait? But I mean, if I get this place, you know, sort of on the farm, this moss won't have anywhere to grow nearby, because there's very little heavy woodland to provide the shade. But anyway, so the idea is to mix some moss in with the media. And we'll start off by putting some in the bottom of the pot, so I know I've got some moss down there. And then we need to get some roots in there. So we've now got to get 2 large plants in this pot, and they are large as well. They're monsters. Now the new growth will come off of this, the latest bulb, but it could come out there, it could come out here, it could come out here. So it might be between the bulbs, it could be on the outside, totally undetermined. So I'm going to stick that towards the middle of the pot. So wherever it comes out, it's not right up against the edge of the pot. This one's already got its new growth here, and I'm going to stick it in sideways so that that new growth has got room to grow, so it can go across the pot there, and there might even be room for the next one along. And now we've got to try and get in us. The trouble is, I've already seen a bit of a problem with this moss in potting, is that it is so coarse, it's difficult to mix in with the media. It just sort of sits on the top. So as I put media in, I'll have to add a little bit of moss as I go, if you see what I mean, so that I know that there's some down in there like that. So I put a bit of media in and then a bit of moss on top, sort of thing. As I said, this is new to me. I'm going by the word of a friend who grows good orchids, and has recently gone across to do this, but I believe he first started using this when he started repotting and mounting the National Dendrobium collection, and that was long enough ago to have seen some pretty good results coming on. So and then it might be nice to actually have some moss sticking out the top, which will then grow across the top of the pot and look pretty, because it really does. Those plants I put into the competition, several people mentioned, well, that moss looks nice, that's a good idea. And some said, where'd you get that then? I said, well, it's Welsh moss, where do you think? But we didn't go to Wales and get it. I don't even know if the estate that it comes from is actually in Wales, but I've been told it's called Welsh moss. That's good enough for me. Right, and then I'm just going to put some loose bits on the top to see if they'll start to grow across the top of the pot. I reckon that'll do. Let's sturdy enough. The new growth's got some media around the base of it, including some nice moss, so that will help keep the base of that new growth moist and encourage those roots. And when they come out, they'll go straight in the pot, which is where I want them. Now I was worried that I wasn't going to mix up enough here, and I've actually gone over the top and mixed up too much. Never mind. Right, so we've got some more moss, find some more green stuff. Some green. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with the rest of what's in this bag. I haven't got anywhere to keep it, and I was thinking of just putting it in the garden, see if it'll grow. You never know. Who knows? So, but it's this garden here faces southwest, and it gets absolutely baked by the summer sun. You know, things growing in pots, and bonsai and stuff like that, they dry so fast with that. And this, because it's enclosed, it's got fencing all round, plus some large trees. It doesn't get a huge amount of breeze and wind to cool it down or anything. It's a real sun trap. You know, for people who like just lazing around in the sun, it's a perfect back garden. It's not really overlooked. I mean, the two houses either side, if they went out and leant out of their bedroom window, yes, they could see in the garden, but people don't tend to do that sort of thing. But it's not overlooked from the houses opposite because of the tall hedge at the bottom. Right, here we go. That's our other pot across. Get some in. Big bit, don't want that. Right, let's see what we do with these. There's not such extensive roots to get in this time. As I said, we've got quite a large, strong new growth there that will probably try and bloom if it hasn't been set back too much, and this one's to grow on. And providing they both produce root systems, you could decide to let them bloom, but I will probably stop them and grow these on into stronger plants, so that when they are allowed to bloom, they'll produce much bigger, better spikes, because they'll have the backup. Yeah, if you let a plant, a single bulb with a new growth bloom, the chances are it won't be a very good spike, because the plant just hasn't got the energy to back up the energy needed to produce that spike. So you'll probably be a bit disappointed with it anyway. And if you wait for the next growth to come along, you know, it's like when a bus comes along and it's full, you let it go and get the next one so that you've got a comfy seat. There's lots of people thinking, I don't think I've ever been on a bus. My chauffeur takes me everywhere. Oh yeah. But yeah, it's, you know, allowing a growth to mature and taking the bloom spike off can have quite good results for the next new growth. Puts the energy that the plant's capable of producing from either feeding, what you give it, and the photosynthesis, it puts all of that into the next new growth, stores it all away while it can, and then puts it into the next new growth that it produces. And it's then got the backup of two strong, healthy bulbs, and the resulting spike will be of a much better quality and size and number of blooms. So yes, being too impatient to get the pretty blooms can sometimes not be good for the plant. Sets it into a bit of a sort of reverse, where it's trying to produce a spike using reserves it hasn't really got, so it starts to use those reserves up faster than it can replace them. Not ideal. Right, that's that one done. A bit more down there. Make sure we get up to the base. And then I'm going to go and find a bit more moss to put on the top like we did with the last one. And a nice bit of green that's not full of grass if I can. Right, some bits there. And just sit those around the top. not the leaf, just the moss. Hopefully that will grow. It helps keep the environment around the base of the plant moist as far as moisture in the air is concerned, without keeping it soggy, because this moss is too coarse. You know, even though it's touching the base of the plant, it's not going to keep the plant wet. It's too coarse, but it can keep the air around it moist. So hopefully we will get some roots soon, and they'll head down into this moss, which apparently really encourages new root growth. We shall see. You don't find out these things if you don't try them out, you know. And you know, even when somebody says, "Oh, that works great for me," that doesn't mean it will work great for you if your environment's quite different. Your watering frequencies and habits are different. It doesn't mean it will work for you. But if it works for one person, then it's got to be worth having a go. So I'm just making sure there's no huge gaps anywhere. See, now that is light as a feather. The pot is light as a feather, and that's because it hasn't been watered yet. So the bark's dry, the cocoa husk is wet, the moss is moist. That weighs a bit more, but that's the plant. So there we go, that's 2 new repots, obviously both Sharry baby. One's got a tag, the other one hasn't, but it will have one, because I've got a lot of large Oncidium types, and it's easy for them to get muddled up. So we will do a new tag for the new pot. So there we go, 2 very healthy looking Sharry babies, or 2 potfuls of very healthy looking Sharry babies. And I can quite safely say I have never seen Sharry babies of this size and quality for sale ever prior to finding these at Burnham's. Now Burnham's didn't grow them, they bought them in, but wherever they came from certainly knows how to grow these on and get them to a good plump size, you know, and produce absolutely massive spikes as a consequence. So it was worth getting. Right, there we go then. See you next time. Bye for now.